Miami let a 20-point lead slip away, but rallied late in the game behind some clutch shooting from Tyler Herro to escape Charlotte with a narrow victory. We break it all down today's episode of Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to Locked On Heat, your daily podcast on the Miami Heat. Whether you're tuning in on YouTube or your favorite podcast app, thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. I'm Wes Goldberg, editor at allyoucanheat.com, here with David Ramil. Both of us are credentialed Heat media members who cover this team every day. Got a big show for you today on Thanksgiving Eve. Heat get a big win. We've got credit cookies to hand out, listener questions to get to. But first, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $100 and $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Plus, your favorite podcast now has a newsletter introducing the Locked On Heat daily newsletter. One stop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox. Sign up for free now at LockedOnDaily.com. That's LockedOnDaily.com and start your day with the all-new free Locked On Heat newsletter. We are recording this after the Heat's 98-94 win over the Charlotte Hornets. The Heat saw their 20-point lead disappear with Jimmy Butler's sideline in the fourth quarter. The Hornets were shorthanded, but the Heat were on the second night of a back-to-back. Duncan Robinson and Tyler Herro led the way for Miami, but LaMelo Ball brought the Hornets back. And then Tyler Herro's three-pointer and a steal in the final 30 seconds sealed the game. The Heat escaped with a win. David, what was it that I said last night? Just fast forward every Heat game to the final couple of minutes, flip a coin, decide which team is up to, and then just play ball? It's exactly what happened.
That way. That's kind of worked out that way, yeah. It was unfortunate. I don't know that. I'm sure Miami could have done things a little differently, maybe tighten the rotation, maybe continue to put pressure defensively. But ultimately, there were so many of those shots that Ball took. And I got to say, along with Joel Embiid, he's probably one of my least favorite players to watch just because it's just so unpredictable. And he's just going to take up these shots. It's so, I don't know. It just goes against every fiber of my being watching him play basketball because none of it makes sense. He doesn't get to the line. He complains too much about free throws. He doesn't really do anything that contributes towards winning basketball. But, at some point in the fourth quarter, he just says, you know what, I'm just going to start taking shots. And it doesn't matter where their shots are from, and then he'll hit them. And it's just it doesn't feel like Steph Curry when he's bombing away late in games. It doesn't feel like any other shooter when they're in those kind of moments. It's just putting up shots and just I'll live with the result one way or the other. It's kind of indifference that I just cannot stand.
It was a terribly inefficient game. We got a comment on Twitter, and I apologize, I forgot who sent it in. I'll try to look it up during the show, but said that LaMelo Ball should get one of these credit cookies that we're going to hand out later on because his inefficiency kind of kept kept the Hornets out of the game, and then obviously he kind of makes that big push late and gets them back into the game. He's got this weird, one-legged step-back three-pointer that he loves to go to, and you could just tell he just does it for the gram. It's there's no reason to do it. It doesn't help, right? It's even the James Harden step back got ragged on and all that, but he was creating separation with it. There was a reason for it, even if some people thought it was technically a travel. He got away with it, and it was for a purpose. LaMelo with this weird, he lifts his right knee. Again, he just does it for the gram because he thinks it looks cool. I'm like, what is this? It's not creating any extra separation. You're off balance. What exactly is this doing for you? So yeah, I'm happy that you started with a LaMelo Ball side swipe there. That's fine. But you look at his game overall, and he has 32 points on 35 shots. He's the point guard of this team. He takes 35. Ostensibly, he takes 35 shots. The next closest Hornet in terms of shot attempts was Brandon Miller at 19. He is not distributing this ball. And he has 7 assists in this game to 7 turnovers. Fun fact, not a great assist to turnover ratio. He does not seem fun to play with at all. And were you watching that game where, I don't know, it was a week ago where Charles Lee benched him? For the final 5 minutes of the game, and it was this big deal. And he was I was just going with a hot hand. It was Trey Mann. We were all connected out there. I thought he was sending a message there. Well, message not received by LaMelo. No. I mean, he did have the hot hand in the fourth quarter. Maybe that was the message. He's like, oh, you just want me to keep making shots? Well, I'm just going to keep taking them. So maybe that was the message he thought he was supposed to receive there. Let's shift gears, though, to the Heat. A weird game. Again, second night of a back-to-back. Jimmy Butler leaves after 25 minutes. Apparently with some back problems. You could see him on the bench with a heating pad on his back, invisible discomfort there. He didn't look right in the 25 minutes that he played. His first 10 minutes did not even take a shot, didn't record any statistical data whatsoever. In his first 10 minutes, just looked looked off, right? Like not even just sort of like not engaged, passive Jimmy Butler, just like visibly, I was like, oh, he looks like something physically is bothering him. And it turns out that something was physically bothering him. Could not finish the game because of it. But Tyler Herro, 27 points in this game. Duncan Robinson, 22 points on 6 of 9 shooting from 3-point range. Those guys carried this game. You got some good stuff from Jaime Jaquez in spurts. But other than that, not much offense coming in this game at all. I mean, neither team even eclipsed the 100-point mark. So that goes without saying. But it was Tyler Herro and Duncan Robinson kind of carrying all the water for Miami.
It's kind of discombobulated there. And look, Miami was playing really sloppy. They just didn't seem to have any kind of flow to what they were doing. Weren't generating great looks overall. A lot of the same problems that have dogged them in terms of missing easy shots to rim, not really being able to capitalize. Their 3-point shooting, aside from Duncan, wasn't really mostly non-existent until late in the game when Tyler started hitting him. I'd like, though, and I know we'll save some credit for Tyler later in the show, but I feel like he made some adjustments. Like he was putting up threes early on. He was getting to the rim and scoring at the rim pretty easily because they don't really have a shot blocker out there. And he was able to at least pepper his offense with that. But then on the 3-point shot, they were falling really flat. Like they were hitting the front of the rim. He just didn't seem to have a lot of juice. And then he made a couple of adjustments that at least I noticed, and maybe I'm reading into it and I couldn't really ask him because we weren't in Charlotte, but like he took corner threes. When he had the shot open from above the break or either at the wing, like he would lean into it a little bit more. You saw one shot in particular where he's wide open. I think on a fast break opportunity, he wound up getting the ball and he just kind of crouched down a little bit lower outside of his normal stance. And he's like, you know what? I need to get a little bit more leg into this in order to get that shot up there. So to me, what really stood out is that Tyler was able to kind of figure out, look, the shot's not falling necessarily, but I can still get this shot going if I'm able to just put a little bit more oomph into it, because he was playing on the second night of back-to-back and he has logged heavy minutes this season overall. Like obviously he's young and he's healthy and he can handle it, but still you don't want those shots just falling flat. And for him to be able to make an adjustment really helped Miami and helped his offense also. So kudos to him for being able to have that kind of self-awareness that I don't think he would have had in years past.
14 shot attempts against Milwaukee, played his standard 35-ish minutes in that game, and then he has 22 shot attempts overall. Yeah, the back-to-back, that stuff matters. This is why you almost circle these back-to-backs as losses, and you could have gotten away with that. The second night of a back-to-back on the road, 3 games in 4 nights, in the middle of this 3-game of 4-night stretch, the the third game is Toronto on Friday, but sometimes you just circle these and say, yeah, that's probably a loss. But Charlotte was so shorthanded with no 7-footers basically in the lineup. Their top 2 guys, Mark Williams, Nick Richards out, missing a bunch of other guys across the lineup that no Miles Bridges, like all these guys that you say, well, this is not the same kind of second night of back-to-back. So there were no excuses to lose this game. And that would have been our lead story had they successfully blown that lead. But, it's a great observation you make of Tyler Herro, right? You crouch down a little bit more and it's like a spring, right? Like you push that spring down a little bit more and it just launches a little bit higher. And I think Tyler Herro was like, oh yeah, I gotta kind of muster this up. I gotta figure out where this energy is going to come from. And he found it in the fourth quarter. That's winning stuff, man. That's grade A Miami Heat culture. Like just do it, get it out there, leave it all on the court, eat a bunch of turkey tomorrow, get your carbs, get your protein, and then come back on Friday, do it all over again against the Raptors. I was talking with Tyler Herro after practice last week on Friday, I think it was, and I was asking him specifically about how he takes care of his body. And I asked Eric Spoelstra about it too, and Spo said for the first time ever since he came into the league, Tyler Herro is spending as much time in the training room, in the weight room, as he does on the court working on his skill development. because Tyler's shooting after practice, the skill development, last guy on the court after practice, still getting shots up. It's like, legendary seems like a strong word, but it's well known in the Heat organization. Nobody works harder on their skill development than Tyler Herro does. And so if he's doing the same thing, investing that same amount of time or something close to it in the weight room, that starts to pay dividends, right? And we see, we hear, I added 10 pounds of muscle, whatever it is, and all this stuff.
Sure.
This is where you really see it, not just in the shoulders and the biceps and the triceps. That stuff's cool and all. That helps you get to the rim, draw some fouls, all that kind of stuff. This is really where you see it. Second night of a back-to-back, and you're able to get a little bit more juice out and leave it all out there on the court in the fourth quarter on the second night of a back-to-back. That was huge for Tyler Herro. He's obviously going to be the recipient of some credit cookies here, but is he the only one? Credit cookies coming up next here on Locked On Heat.
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet just $5 and they get a $150 bonus bet if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. But not just that. Sometimes you're watching a game, you get a hunch in the middle of it, and you want to check out the latest stats, or maybe you want to view live play-by-play from around the league. Well, you can do that and so much more, all on the same page where you place your bets, but only when you visit FanDuel.com and join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. We'll be right back.
Thanks again for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. The best way to support the show, like and subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on your favorite podcast app. We're so thankful for all the subscribers, everybody who likes the videos, everybody who leaves us 5-star ratings on the podcast app. We really do appreciate it all. And if you're not subscribed yet, why not? Just hit that button. It's time for the tastiest segment of Locked On Heat, David. It's time for some credit cookies.
Cookie guy, stack them high like a cookie chain. Sharing with friends, spreading the fame. Every bite, life's never the same. Late night cravings, we
Making a rain chocolate chips over there? I mean, what's going on over here? I mean,
We're handing out the cookies. We got 10 cookies to hand out.
all right. Well, you know what?
Shout out
Let's get to it.
Brian Castaldo. He was the one who had mentioned LaMelo needs some credit cookies here. That was the one I referenced before. So shout out to Brian,
Absolutely.
who's a constant listener and commenter on Twitter there. All right. Credit cookies, got 10 of them to hand out. David, who's getting them?
I've got 4 players getting cookies.
Wow.
Start off. Yeah, obviously Tyler Herro.
Okay.
I think he was the game changer for Miami, made those adjustments that we spoke of, had the big steal later on. So I'm giving him 4 credit cookies on the night, but I'm also giving Duncan Robinson 4 credit cookies for his performance early on. Like, he sat a lot of the second half. They brought him in, Spo making the adjustment of saying, you know what, we need our guy out there, because he certainly greased the wheels on offense pretty considerably there. So for what he was able to do, especially in the first quarter and the first half in general, he gets 4 credit cookies. But I'm also giving 1 credit cookie to Jaime Jaquez. I thought he was a solid contributor, not a great one perhaps, but his energy, his defensive awareness, his rebounding, he had some nice moments there, as you alluded to earlier. So he gets 1 cookie. And you know what? For his first credit cookies of his NBA career, Khalil Ware gets a credit cookie for having some nice moments, a key block, free throws down the stretch, had a nice moment there. So he gets the credit cookie.
Yeah, I was close to just splitting Tyler Herro and Duncan Robinson right down the middle, going 5 and 5. But I like the vibes. Khalil Ware, his first 2 free throw attempts of his career. I mean,
big night.
That's a pretty high pressure situation. Hey, make these, you seal the win. Not, you know, they weren't to tie the game, they weren't to go ahead. They didn't need necessarily those free throws, but that's still, for a rookie, a big moment. He sunk both of them, man. So he gets the credit. Jaime Jaquez, to your point, the only other player in double figures in terms of scoring on the roster. So they needed every bit from all these guys. So I'm good with it. I'm good with that. But yeah, the bulk of this goes to Tyler, goes to Duncan. This was the reason why you start those 2 guys, right? Both of them can get going at any moment. the more minutes you can play them, the higher the likelihood is that they get going, right? Tyler Herro, 38 minutes in this game. Duncan Robinson, 33. They were second well, Tyler was first in minutes. Duncan was third in minutes. Bam had played 36 minutes in this game. He was second. But you get those guys on the court as much as possible. Those are your two best shooters by a mile.
Yep.
You need those guys on the court, especially when a lot of these other guys' shots aren't necessarily going in. I want to talk about that steal a little bit more from Tyler because we haven't necessarily dug into that. So he hits that. So the Heat's 20-point lead evaporates in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
Tyler Herro hits this huge three-pointer with about 30 seconds left in the game. The Heat go back up, retake the lead, 95-94. And then on the very next play, LaMelo Ball, as he always does, has the ball in his hands for Charlotte. And Tyler Herro talked about this on the broadcast. Eric Reed and John Crotty asked him about it. I thought it was a good question by them. They said, what did you see on that steal? And Tyler just went right to, you could tell he was watching the film. He's like, look, I know LaMelo Ball's tendencies on that particular play. He likes to kind of get into his dribble and then get the ball to a teammate, usually the one that's over here on the above the break, and that was Brandon Miller. And so I thought that's where he was going to go with it. I anticipated it. I jumped the passing lane. I got the steal, and then we were in transition. I was like, that's a dude paying attention to the game film. That's real NBA winning player stuff.
Yep.
Tyler, this is not the first steal that Tyler Herro has had to win a game. He had one last season at the beginning of the year. Was it against Boston or Milwaukee? One of these green teams, I thought. But early in Indiana, maybe not green, yellow, close enough. I don't know. It was early in the season, but he had a steal on an inbound pass that kind of sealed the game for Miami. But this was his first one this season, and I thought it was maybe the most impressive one, maybe the most impressive defensive play of his career, where it was just he looked like Jimmy Butler out there. Let me just go grab this ball, let me anticipate it. He took a chance, but you know what? Eric Spoelstra is willing to live with it. If you take the chance and you come up more often than not with the right play, with the steal there, with the turnover, I just thought it was tremendous. I'm going long, but I thought it was tremendous.
You mentioned the weight gain and the muscle mass that he's put on and everything else like that. If it's going to manifest in any other kind of noticeable way aside from the daily grind and having to adjust and be able to heal faster, etc., I don't know that he would have gotten the steal in years past. Like as strong as he was, he might have just got a hand on it, and Brandon Miller might have just been like, "Oh, thanks a lot,"
or just not gone for it, right?
Yeah.
It's so much easier to just not go for that in terms of wear and tear on the body. Yeah,
right. But the fact that he was able to wrestle it free might not have been able to do that. Brandon Miller might have just been able to hang on to it, turn around and been like, "Okay, well, that was a moment there, and I'm just going to go ahead and unload for another 3-point shot," and they would have retained possession. Instead, Herro forces the turnover. So that was an impressive play for him to be able to do the work, to read it, to understand, and come up with that kind of clutch awareness in the moment. That's not something every player can do. And so I'm proud of Tyler,
man, to go after it.
That was a big play. Yeah, it was courage, awareness, and strength, like all the different factors tying in there. So good for Tyler, because it was obviously he's he's criticized for being a poor defender. He's attacked a lot because of his defense, and just when he's out there on the floor, other teams try to kind of position themselves so they can attack him directly. But at the same time, I feel like if he's able to make these off-ball reads, he can still be positively impacting the game defensively.
It's a great point, right? He's going to be attacked defensively. It's just going to happen with the limitations that he has physically. But you make up for that to get, there's a big difference between being a huge negative defensively and even just being slightly below average or average.
Sure.
And there were times in his career where he was a complete negative on that end. I don't think he is that anymore. And he's always been a good rebounder for his position. He had 8 rebounds in this game, all 8 of those defensive rebounds. When you're able to go in there, end a defensive possession, and then start bringing the ball up the court, and with Tyler's ability to pull up from 3-point range, that's a really important kind of little hidden attribute to his game. And he's, like I said, always been good at that. He's even gotten better at that and will get better at that as he continues to get stronger. But then getting a steal or 2 per game also, that can really swing some stuff, right? Especially if you get a stop and a score the way he did in those final 30 seconds tonight. So yeah, huge. That's the way to do it defensively. Duncan Robinson, I love his shot chart tonight. 12 shot attempts, 7 of 12 overall, 9 of those from 3-point range, 6 of 9 from beyond the arc. Just 3 2-pointers in this game, all of them at the basket or near the rim. And I've said this before, I love Duncan Robinson last season, kind of showing off the other parts of his game. Hey, I can put the ball on the ground, I can get to the basket, I can even run some pick and roll. I think that stuff's like cool and fun and important, but I liked it more when he was just launching it from 3-point range, and I thought he got a little too far from that last year, mostly because he had to, because they were so beat up last season. A point that you've made too before, but this is his wheelhouse. This is the sweet spot. Yep. Take a couple of 2-pointers, attack off the dribble a little bit. You got 3 2-pointers. You got 9 3-pointers. Threes are worth more than twos. You're amazing at taking these threes and making these threes. 6 of 9 from beyond the arc. That's the perfect shot chart for him.
He looks healthy. He looks like he's able to take those shots in rhythm, coming off of screens. He doesn't need much space. He doesn't need much time to get that shot going. And so, like, when he's looking the way he did tonight, you can tell that he's just reached another level. And I mean, we've talked about it to him before. Like when he's feeling that confidence, he was coming after a call timeout. I forgot. It was in the first half. I think they had their first double-digit lead of the game or something along those lines. And he's coming off. And he pushes Chris Quinn. Did you notice that? Where he shoves kind of Chris Quinn. Like, obviously, him and Quinn have a friendship, and Quinn being the guy who works with him on his shooting and stuff like that. So we know it's all fun and games. But at the same time, like, I would love to be in the moment there in that huddle and hear what he has to say when he's jawing like that, when his brain is disconnected and he's just kind of just letting word vomit fly from his mouth.
Duncan's been into the pushing lately. He was pushing Jimmy Butler earlier in the season, and they kind of got into a fake fight. Yeah. That was kind of fun. The Duncan Robinson push, that's a thing for him now. It's his like go-to celebration.
He's feeling it. He's like, he's coming out. He's got the vibes. Why not? So good for Duncan.
Good for him. My wife sees this stuff. She sees like, that's a sports thing where like guys get excited and they just start pushing each other, like in the NFL, like in football where you slap each other on the head. And she sees this stuff all the time. She'll walk by the TV and shake her head and she's like, why? Boys are such idiots. And I'm just like, he's excited. Yep. She's like, well, why are you hurting your friend? And I was like, that's a good point. That's a very solid point. Coming up next, are we out of excuses for Bam's offensive struggles? Plus, what do we make of Miami's 8-8 start? We get to your listener questions next here on Locked On Heat.
Stack them high like a cookie chain. Sharing with friends, spreading the fame. Every bite, life's never the same.
Today's episode is brought to you by Skylight Frames. Do you find yourself struggling maybe to get the perfect gift during the holidays? Maybe gift giving isn't exactly in your wheelhouse. It's not Duncan Robinson's 3-point shot. You overthink it. You wind up with something disappointing or maybe nothing at all. Or maybe you're buying something for someone who has everything or just seems unpleasable. Believe me, I know plenty of people like that. Are you tired of wasting money on useless clutter that no one really needs? Well, we've got the perfect gift for you because Skylight Frame is the touchscreen digital photo frame your whole family will love. Upload thousands of photos with your phone and watch them appear in seconds. People love this. It's so easy to use. Setup takes less than 60 seconds. It's got seamless sharing, so you can invite friends and family to easily share photos via the free Skylight mobile app or via email. No account or subscription is required. And you can add new photos straight from your phone from anywhere. It only takes a tap on your phone, and you can send new photos to a frame across the country. It's the fastest, easiest way to keep loved ones in the loop, and they'll feel so much more connected to you. And now, as a special limited time offer for our listeners, get $20 off your purchase of a Skylight frame when you go to skylightframe.com/NBA. That's SKYLIGHTFRAME.com/NBA, and you get $20 off your purchase now at skylightframe.com/NBA. Get $20 off a Skylight Frame at skylightframe.com/NBA. We'll be right back.
Can I just say, we got my parents the Skylight Frame a year or two ago. It is so much fun. Just like we have it connected to our phone, and you could send like loving pictures and nice things, or you can kind of prank them too with just like random pictures of nothing, of your like your food, your dinner. So it's a lot of fun. So highly recommend that. Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. The best way to support the show: like and subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on your favorite podcast app. Thanks to everybody who sent in questions on the Locked On Heat Insider community. If you want to subscribe to that, the link is in the show notes. Free for 14 days, goes to $4.99 a month. After that, you get exclusive content from me and David, our reporting on the ground. You get to interact with us one-on-one, and you get, for these post-game shows, first dibs at asking us questions that we're going to answer. This first one comes from William, who writes in, at first, it was the offensive scheme change, so Bam was struggling to find his spots offensively. Almost 20 games in, Bam still hasn't seemed to find a rhythm, and his defense has been questionable at times. What's going on with Bam? Is this a consequence of the Olympics? Again, that question from William. David, what do you think?
I don't know. We've seen some players struggle that way. Like you look at Tyrese Halliburton, right? And we had Tony East of Locked On Pacers on. He didn't seem to think that there was any correlation with the Olympics, but it's possible. I just don't, that feels like it's so long ago and so far in the rearview mirror that I can't believe that that's impacting Bam at this point. He's gone through the process before. And yes, that there was during the lockout, and I'm sorry, not the lockout, but the COVID and during the pandemic. And it was a very different just interactions and everything else like that. I'm sure it wasn't quite the exhausting experience that this past tournament was, and just as far as being able to just participate in everything that Paris had to offer, there was probably a lot more involved for Bam this past tournament. Having said all that, I don't think there's any correlation. Like my personal opinion is that there isn't. I just think he just doesn't know what to do. Like it's a combination of factors. I think his teammates aren't getting him the ball in spots where it's convenient for him to find ways to score. They're not making life easier on him as the offense has shifted. I think it's also some passivity that he's always had as part of his mental approach to the game. And I think it's just become magnified now. And I think he's still in his head now, even at this stage of his career, where if he's struggling and having a bad game in terms of his offensive production, he'll kind of just regress a little bit. And you'll see him like there's moments now where he's like complaining about fouls, which wasn't really part of what he used to do before. And it's just he's kind of stuck in his head a little bit. And so I think there's that. I would also wonder whether or not he might be injured, because I've said this to you before. He just does not look as athletic or explosive as he did. And that was one of his strengths, was being able to finish around the rim and be able to finish at a high level because of his athleticism. And that just, it seems to be sapped to some degree. So I wonder if there might be something else there in terms of his overall physical health. But there were moments there tonight where he's wide open from the perimeter. He's not letting it fly. And I know, it wasn't during the time when Charlotte was making their comeback or anything like that. It was when Miami had their lead or was trying to build their lead even more. And he's still looking for the right play instead of just saying, you know what, this is mine. I can take this. I feel comfortable doing so. I'm going to take this shot. So he's still kind of stuck in trying to figure out, how you always get to those points where it's like, do I shoot off the glass or do I shoot it straight through the net? Like that seems to be his overall approach to every shot right now, is that he's not sure what to do. He's like, oh, can I take that 15-foot shot? Or do I hear Spo yelling in the background saying, no mid-range jumpers, So I don't know exactly what's going on mentally, but I would say that's probably a big, if not a completely, I would say it's 90% of what's going on with Bam is purely mental.
I think that's a big part of it. Yeah. And I think the brainwashing of training camp of, hey, mid-range shots are worth 1 point during training camp. Shots at the basket and three-pointers are worth 3.
Yep.
Worked on Bam. That brainwashing definitely worked. And now asking him to kind of snap out of it is a tough ask, kind of midstream right now. So, like I said, his sweet spot was always that free throw line jumper. You take that away from him, he didn't really have another sweet spot. This is not a guy who got to the rim frequently, not a guy whose three-point shot was a part of his game until basically the last 15 games of last season, and then kind of somewhat in the Olympics. So that's part of it. I think the other part of this too is his dribble doesn't look right. He's never been an awesome ball handler, but he loses the ball quite a bit. And this is not somebody who feels comfortable dribbling it, I would say, more than twice in a face-up position. Like in a post-up position, he can kind of dribble, kind of, pivot here and there. He's comfortable sort of with that, but not super comfortable. But in that face-up situation, he doesn't really know how to get by his guy. Maybe that's a physical limitation. Maybe it's a mental thing. Maybe it's just the fact that, like I said, his handle, he's never had a great one. And I think you're seeing that start to become more of a factor as Miami asks him to kind of go from that triple threat spot in the middle of the court to the basket. And when you're not able to blow, he's got the athleticism to blow by these guys, but he might not have the handle to blow by these guys. And that's a thing that I think gets overlooked a lot. This is a game where there were no excuses. Nick Richards is out. Mark Williams hasn't played all year for Charlotte. So they're starting Taj Gibson.
Yeah.
Taj Gibson, who played against the big three Miami Heat when he was with the Chicago Bulls. That's who they were starting at center in this game. Yeah. He can only play 10 minutes because that dude is barely hanging on to a spot in the league. And so they go with Moussa Diabate, who I would be surprised if 10% of our audience ever heard of. Yeah. They go with him for 33 minutes in this game, and he's in front of Bam possession after possession, and they feed Bam the ball. And they're kind of, you can see them. They're asking Bam, go for it, man. Like we don't know who this guy is. He's not even on our scouting report. Go for it. And he won't go for it. And I think it's mental, and I think there's just some limitations to his overall skill set. This was the first game where I looked at it and I was like, I'm out of excuses for him. There was no excuse for Bam's performance in this game. And I'm telling you, had the Heat lost, that would have been the story. That would have been the story.
I think it's still a story even despite the win. Like,
oh no,
you need more. You need more from him. Like this is not just because of the pay. And I know everybody's going to point to it right away and say you're paying him as a superstar. Well, I mean, we've debated that before, and there's all the other factors that he contributes on, et cetera. But like he needs to be better. And that's some kind of accountability that he needs to take that right now. I'm not sure what his process is. Like, I'm not sure whether he starts to say, you know what, I know I'm playing badly, I've got to be better, or whether or not that just starts the cycle all over. Because you get into that repetitive mind frame of being like, man, I've really struggled. And I start thinking about, I've got to do more, but then that puts more pressure on you.
And he hasn't really, I don't know that he's prepared for this. Like, he's put so much work in, like I said, he's put so much work into that mid-range jumper for the last 3 years, basically. And then to basically be told, we don't do that anymore, you're like, well, why did I work on that for 3 years? Where maybe I should have been working on my handle. Maybe I should have been working on all this stuff a little bit more. And so maybe it's just a situation where he says, I got to kind of go back to the drawing board a little bit here. We're running out of time, but I do want to get to these last two questions. Malachi, again, Locked On Heat Insider Program. You could sign up for free for 14 days, $4.99 a month after that. Really appreciate everybody who's involved over there. Malachi writes in, is it time for Kel'el Ware to get more playing time? Will we ever see him and Bam play together? Is it time for Kel'el Ware to get more playing time? He is getting more playing time. He's been Miami's primary backup, in part because Kevin Love has been out. Played 12 minutes tonight, 4 points, 5 rebounds, 1 steal, 1 block, and then those 2 free throws that we mentioned in the first segment. Do you think it's time for him to be the primary backup center now? Did you see enough?
I'm kind of leaning yes, because it feels like, well, you've got to be able to unlock something different about this team than what we've seen over the last few years, and he represents that better than anybody else. But it also feels like that's just not going to happen. Like, he's just also not good enough. And I don't know that Kevin Love has done enough to lose his spot in the rotation. And once he's healthy, he'll probably go back to taking over those minutes that had been going to Kel'el. So my answer is no, he's not going to get more minutes. But yes, I'd like to see him play more. And yes, I'd like to see him play more alongside Bam Adebayo. Because I was even going to say, when we were talking about Bam, like, maybe this is all part of just some sheer exhaustion and kind of just understanding, look, I complained. I said what I could. I don't want to play center anymore. You're still paying me at center. Well, guess what? I'm not going to give 140% the way I have in the past. I'm not going to exert myself until the postseason, knowing that I'm going through this incredible physical toll.
Yeah, I'm not. That doesn't read like a.
It doesn't sound like Bam,
right? It doesn't sound like Bam. But to your overall point, that he's like this wear and tear over several years, like the Olympics is one thing. What about like going up against Nikola Jokic in the 2023 finals and playing center your entire life when you're just smaller than every dude that you're playing against? Maybe this is taking a toll on him. And maybe it is time to play him next to center. And for the record, I do think the Heat would love to play Bam next to a center. When they even started for a few games Kevin Love next to Bam, they had Kevin Love mostly guard opposing centers. They want to find a break for this guy. This is not reluctance by the Miami Heat. This is not Eric Spoelstra deciding that he's going to put Bam in these situations. This is them realizing, rather, this is our best option because Kel'el Ware isn't quite ready to play and Kevin Love isn't functional as a starter at this stage in his career, and they just don't really have that guy anymore, and haven't had that guy for a long time, quite frankly. So, I think I'd like to see Kel'el get more playing time. I trust the Heat's coaching staff that has been so good at developing these players. It's funny how we just say, "Oh, they're amazing at developing players," except they're missing the ball with Kalel Ware. It's like, okay, or are they? I trust their instincts on this, and I trust their judgment on this. So when he's ready, he'll get more time, and it'll probably be a lot like this. It'll probably be just sort of on and off, at least for the first half of the season. Last one here, the link up with Don to Don and Brian both wrote in similar questions. Wes, you said that you know who this team would be by Thanksgiving. Do you feel like we know enough, given that they're 8-8? Brian Rice wrote in, you said this stretch run before Thanksgiving would tell us a lot about the Heat this season. So we're 8-8. Where are we? With 4 losses being a coin flip games in the final 10 seconds. David, I think we know exactly where this team is. I think I said before the year, by Thanksgiving, we'll know if this team is good enough. This team's not good enough. Not good enough to come out of the Eastern Conference. This team is 8-8, and they feel very 8-8-ish, and they feel very much like a team that could make the playoffs, maybe even escape the play-in tournament and be a top 6 seed. And I still think that would be my prediction if you made me make one right now. Top 6 in the East. I still think they get there, and I still think their best basketball is ahead of them. But I don't see a ceiling for this team remotely close to what it is that I've seen from Boston or Cleveland this season. I don't see a ceiling for this team that comes out of the Eastern Conference. I thought that maybe, like my most optimistic self said, maybe an Eastern Conference Finals team, and at that point, anything's possible. I just don't think it's in the cards for this group right now.
That's all fair. I can't criticize that take. I have faith that they'll probably be able to go on a deeper run just because we've seen it from this group in the past, but they're not showing much. Like even tonight, had they been able to just put their foot down and keep it there and been able to escape with an easy win that they haven't had since Mexico City, that just feels bro. I mean, there was that one game in Indiana too where Tyrese Halliburton struggled mightily, but even then, it's been so few and far between. They've got to be able to show that they could do something. Even Jimmy Butler said after last game that they're far from where they want to be. So I think they understand that they're not playing their best basketball, and they have not been able to play their best basketball. But somehow they've got to find a way for everybody to function on the same page. A little bit of that is on the players. A lot of that is also on Spo, and I think he's got to do a better job of managing them and trying to eke more out of this group in particular.
I'm still having more fun watching this group than I had last season. So I still think
that
this
was a
team
low point. So yeah,
that's fair enough. Low bar. I hope that's not a negative thing. It's just saying there's only a select few groups in the league that ever have a chance every season of winning the championship. And I just don't see this team as that. But as you always say, championships aren't everything. That's not the only value to a season. And so I still think this team could have a successful year. I just don't see NBA Finals necessarily in their future, but I'd love to be proven wrong. I've been proven wrong before. Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Like, comment, subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on your favorite podcast app. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. We'll see you soon.